So I think we start soon. I have this friendly, I think we have still a minute, like I'm very in love with timing. But like in a minute. Soweit? Fertig? Good. So welcome to our talk, contributing to the Eclipse platform project. Thank you very much for showing up and having interest in this topic. I did a similar talk last year, so it will be basically a little bit different, but a similar topic. I'm Lars Vogel, presenting this to you. I'm an Eclipse platform developer and also Eclipse 4 developer. I do a lot of contributions there, trying to make it also easier for new people to join the project. I also have co-founded a little company in Hamburg, and we do commercial Eclipse support, implementation and training support. Today I'm talking about why you should contribute to the Eclipse platform and also how to do it. I'm also talking, if time permits, about what we're trying to do to make it simpler for you to join the platform project, and if time still permits, and it will not, also what we're planning to do as a feature-wise set. I have written a book about contributing, and I'm planning to give one copy at least away here. So if you ask a really intelligent question, I try to give you this book, and if you have interest on contributing. So why should you care? Why should you care contributing to the Eclipse project? Because someone else is doing it, right? There's like the IBM guys working on it. There may be the Google guys working on it. And I come to believe the Googela guys working also on it. So basically there are several reasons for doing this before we're going into the technology. And one of the reasons is to help your friends, right? You have friends, and if you are a geeky developer like you should be, you have developer friends, and you try to make them happy. Like Oliver is a friend of mine, and I did a few changes, which was really annoying for Oliver, and he told me once on a conference, now he's happy again with Eclipse, right? So not a potential IntelliJ user. The other reason why you would potentially contribute to Eclipse is that you see some issues which annoys you, right? Like Nico. He complained about the performance of Eclipse 4.4, and he actually contributed also to Eclipse, right? So he may be in a position to fix his own concern and work more efficient, right? The other reason of working on an open source project is really it's fun, right? If you're in a development environment, like I used to be, I worked for SAP, and we had really good people in SAP, but it's a limited selection of people you can work with. While in an open source project, you meet the great and greatest, right? You have the people which has written the frameworks, have thought about it, and you get great advice from it. So it's cool, you learn a lot about it. And of course, from a business side, there's also some value in it, right? I tend to recommend to our customers that they should contribute to the Eclipse project. Instead of working around some issues, they could just fix it in platform, and then the maintenance cost is not with this customer, it is with the Eclipse project. And, so there is some money also involved in this, doing this. So, of course, the other reason why you should contribute is because we're looking actively for contributors. So let's, now hopefully you're convinced to contribute. We're talking about how you can contribute. Let me ask you, per sign of hands, who has already used Git before? Okay. I would guess that is almost everyone, so I don't have to talk about Git. Who used Gerrit before? Okay, let's say 60% of our audience uses already Gerrit, so maybe the talk is not that interesting for you. I talk a little bit about Gerrit. The first thing to contribute to Eclipse is to open a bug, right? Describing a problem you are having or a feature you would like to see in the Eclipse IDE. And to my utmost surprise, if I go to customers and do my workshops, whatever, consultancy, typically there are people which do 8 years, 5 years Eclipse RCP or plugin development. And typically within these audiences, it's rare that someone has opened a bug. EclipseCon audience must be different, right? So here, who here has opened a bug already? That is much more than in my customer workshops. It's like 50% of the audience has opened a bug. So basically, already what we call an Eclipse contributor, right? Eclipse user goes to a website, downloads it, uses it, is frustrated or really happy with the Eclipse IDE. Once you do something to help the Eclipse project, you write a blog post or something, or open a bug, you become a contributor. And that is great by itself. It's even better if you contribute code. Because in the end, code is what you're using. But how do you do that, right? And I think the process has been largely simplified, and there is a lot of initiatives going on to make it even simpler. So some people may have joined the UMF talk yesterday, and these guys working on making the setup simpler. Who was in the UMF talk? Just, all right, like 20%. They showed the manual, right, what you have to do to set it up. It was a little bit fake because what they also showed was what is the Eclipse project and how to run the tests and political things. The actual technical setup, which I will show, is relatively simple. So if you want to contribute code to a project, and in this case Eclipse, it must be simple for both sides. Yeah? It used to be a time where contribution was issued to the Eclipse project as a patch. So the person who wanted to contribute to Eclipse was downloading the source code from CVS, working on something, and then creating a diff file, so the difference with what he did, or a patch file which includes a little bit more meta information, and was creating a bug report, attaching it to the bug report. That was well and fine, but for the code reviewer, it was a lot of work to look at this, because you cannot really read diff files if you're not trained to do so, and you cannot test the diff file. So basically what we had to do, we had to go to the patch, apply to our local source tree, and then the patch was perhaps using a different root directory than we were using, and we had to figure that out. Then we look at the code, and we had to write in the bug report the stuff we didn't like in the patch, and then the person had to upload a new patch, and so on and so on. This was really a hideous process. It was really time-consuming for both sides, and as a result, the Eclipse project did not do as much code reviews as it should have been, at least for platform, I can say this. We had patches there for years, like 5 years, 8 years, waiting for a reviewer to look at it. On the other side, if you are contributing a patch and you get feedback like 3 months later, please update the file. It's also a hideous process for you. You have to check it out again. You have to change this. The nice thing is, as 60% of this audience already know, this is a problem solved from my perspective. We're now using in Eclipse the Gerrit code review system, and it allows a very smooth process. It is maybe not as smooth as GitHub pull requests. I'm not sure if you're working also with GitHub. GitHub pull request tends to be a little bit easier because it has a fancy web user interface. So people which are used to Git pull request find Gerrit a little bit complex, but once you get over this technology barrier, it's really easy to do code review. Most of you know Gerrit, so just a brief introduction. Gerrit is basically a wrapper around your repository. So if you're a contributor or committer, you push not directly to the holy repository, the Git repository. You push to Gerrit, and Gerrit will take your commit you are pushing and create a review from that. It basically then will allow people to look at the web UI, looking at the change, and also getting this change into local repository for testing. Then this stays there until it has been reviewed, and the review process is relatively smooth for both sides, which I'm trying to demonstrate very soon. And then once the review process is done, someone with write permissions, like commit permissions on this repository, presses a submit button, and it will be applied to the whole repository and be delivered with the next release. It's a relatively painless process. Who here in the audience has actually issued a Gerrit request already? Awesome, awesome. Like 10%, 5%? audience, very good. So to do this, there's a little organizational setup required, right? So you basically need to create a user, which should not come as a surprise. So you go to the Gerrit website, you create a user, and it's really easy. So basically, you go to eclipse.org, geteclipse.org/r, and everything is written down. You don't need to know this. There's a web interface, and if you're not logged in yet, you will see all the reviews which are publicly available. All the reviews from Eclipse are publicly available, and then there's a little button here, create a user, and we just create a user, right? Like you know it from every web interface. Then you also need to sign what we call a contractor license agreement, CLA, which means I'm allowed to contribute this code to the Eclipse project. Because obviously, if you work in an environment where your employee says you're not allowed to contribute, this is copyright protected, we should not accept it within an open source project. So you need basically to confirm that what you're contributing is actually written by yourself, and you have the permission to deliver it to the project. It's a one-time thing. It's a web page, which is listed here. You go there, you say yes, yes, yes. You have to put in the address, but this is not validated, so you can put McDonald's into the address field, and then you say done, and then you can just upload changes. So it's a little bit set up. Then basically what you have to do, you have to decide where you want to contribute, and I'm using platform. That is also very easy. You basically go again to this eclipse.org/r, and there's a button projects, and there's a list of projects here. And then internet gods are with us. Platform, you search for a platform project. It lists all the platform projects we have. And the interesting bit of platform, I say most interesting bit, it's UI, because that is where you find SWT, JFace, all the services. There's also runtime. Runtime has all this headless stuff, like the non-UI services, translation service, for example, from Dirk contributed, which is sitting here in this corner. Very nice person. Also the author of Nut table. So basically, these are the interesting bits, and there's also user assistance for the help system, but you can basically get to everything. I'm an Eclipse UI committer, so I just click on this. I'm logged in, so it basically gives me different options to clone the repository with my user. So you see here, this is basically the URL which I could use to clone the repository. If you're familiar with Git, which all of you are, you know what this means. You basically copy it. Cool people do it on the command line. Go to cd git2, and then you say clone. And depending on your interconnection, which is really bad at the moment here, you have it on your hard drive within half an hour, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. When we have the whole version control system, I cancel that, it takes too long here. You have a whole version history of the platform UI repository, and you can see what we did in the past. You can check out the code in the state 5 years ago and work with that, right? So basically you have a source code. Then you go to your Eclipse, and you would like to import it. So the easiest way I know of is open the Git repository views. Everyone knows this quick access box, right? So you type in Git repository view, and you get it open here. Then you say, I have it already cloned, so it's local on my hard disk. You press this Add an existing local Git repository button, which is the first one in this, and select the repository. And I select one which I have not yet configured for Gerrit. I have not yet configured for Gerrit. So something else, the news repository. We're writing our news on Noteworthy today. So this is my repository, and I can basically say here, right mouse click, import projects, and I now have imported the project from Platform News. So now I would like to write a news entry, right? As a committer, I'm allowed to do this. But everyone can do this. I go here, and I take index, and I do some changes, right? Great news, I think. And now I would like to contribute this news to Gerrit, to the Eclipse project. So I have to configure now one more additional step to make it actually work, because assuming I'm not a committer, I cannot directly push. So I basically open this remote node and say on the original thing, right mouse click, do Gerrit configuration. Gerrit configuration, I'm completely fine with the defaults it gives me. And if you notice, there's a yellow icon here, which says it's a Git repository and not configured for Gerrit. And if I finish this, it changes to a green one, which means it's now configured for Gerrit. Details are, of course, visible. You can basically, in the properties view, you can basically look at this and you see the push configuration pushes, if you're a Git person, pushes the actual head to refs for master, which is a different ref spec where you're pushing to. Yeah, that's fine, that's fine. And basically, this means it goes to Gerrit, and Gerrit will create a Gerrit review from there. Yeah? So I'm not looking at, remove actually from this view. I'm not looking at news and noteworthy. This was just a lame joke. Let me see, platform UI. Yeah, so I did this already for platform UI. And I'm now saying, give me platform UI. Importing that and importing the projects here. Yay. A few projects, we're in process of cleaning that a little bit up, and like after a while we'll finish, right? So while it's importing, let me just look at some of the existing things we have in our repository. This is my personal private email account, which we're looking at, and actually it's my company account. And I have an incoming flow of bug reports and Gerrit reviews. So I have a rule set so that it doesn't spill in my inbox. We see Tom Schindler is doing something. The Hudson build server tells me that something has been successfully built. I see new bug reports. Our builder is also building all the time. So let's say Tom did just very shortly that something. It has been built. We are validating every change which is uploaded to Gerrit via our build server to ensure that it compiles. Right? So if you're a new contributor, at least you know it compiles. So you're taking away the burden that it may break the build. I can also open that up and look at the details, what Tom is doing. It takes a while. I'm now logged on and I'm looking at this specific request, and I see basically there is a commit message, which is on the very top. And I also see that there is one change in the column viewer. And I now can go in there. I'm actually curious what Tom did, so I'm looking at this now, right now. Bear with me, I'm now looking at the code. So what did Tom do? He did reformat the whole file, which is something we discourage. And he added a little bit of white space, which is also something we discourage to contributors. I'm not sure if Tom will listen to my bias. So you see, basically, thank you, Tom, for this good example. This is really hard to see what he actually changed, right? That's the reason why we discourage formatting changes. Very good and fitting example. So basically, if I would now have the time, I should probably tell Tom, you reformatted the whole file. That is something you should not do. Let me look at no, this is not one. Let me look at another review from another person, again sitting here, Dirk. This is a review Dirk uploaded, similar to what Tom did. Dirk is doing some cool stuff with internationalization, and he talks today about this. And of course, he will also talk about this new development in his talk. But he did this awesome development, right? And he uploaded a version. I can see the different divisions he did. And he has now 4 versions uploaded. The first one, the second one, I did a quick review, right? We have different reviews. The first one I typically do is just look for formal errors, right? Like silly errors, which makes it maybe harder to read. So I looked at his implementation. If internet goes down, this ends earlier. And also he did a new class, few new classes, and he introduced white space, right? And this creates, it's a silly discussion, but it's just discouraged by our project. So I basically, just stopping here from my first review, and wrote to Dirk, okay, please remove the white space, right? So he did this, but he also complained that JDT adds white space in certain spaces, right? So he says, I'm not able to remove the last two trailing white spaces, they added again on save. We actually talked about that yesterday, and then he solved it himself, but as we want him to be a happy contributor, we should also do something about it, right? And I picked this as an example to do a change in repository. It's not a code change, but it fits well in this setup. So you were working on core services, I think. Where am I? Yes, this is SWT. This is a different one. Core services. Is that correct? Services. No. Which plugin did you work on? But you did it in runtime, huh? So let me see. He did it in a different repository, which I was trying to import. So let me just import here the projects. Going here, select all services, core services. Core service. Here we go. So there is actually a setting which we can do on this project to prevent white space from being generated. If I go right mouse click here and I go to properties, I can say the formatter of this should be this one. It's our new formatter. And also the save actions I would like to activate is remove trailing white space. Also this final stuff is stupid, and that is also silly. So basically I have now activated a few save actions, so whenever someone saves, trailing white space will be automatically removed. Right? So I apply this. And now I have a change in my Git staging view. Two configuration files have changed. So I put it in. I would like to commit this. We have a rule that every contribution must refer to a bug, and I think I've opened one for that. Let me see. Yeah, so this is my bug report, which I've opened. I did a little pre-work for that, but I actually removed the existing white spaces, and don't tell Daniel because I'm not allowed to. So I put this in as a commit message. I need also to sign it off, which basically means I guarantee that I have written this configuration. Usually it's source code, but the change ID will be filled in once I commit. And then it's a unique identifier for Gerrit for updates. If I do an amended commit with the same change ID, or a different commit with a change ID, it will update the Gerrit review. This is how updating Gerrit review works. You just amend your commit, and then it will update the Gerrit review. So I commit and push that. And again, if the gods of internet are with us, I should create a new Gerrit review. I always push to Gerrit. Other committers are committing directly, but I think it's fair to a general audience if everyone uses the same tools. So I basically go to my review, and I review it, and now I say, awesome, right? Just look at the details, but I know what's happening here. So this is good. It is not on the top of a current remote branch, so I could rebase that locally with my Git tooling, but I can also use the rebase functionality within this tooling here. So there's a rebase button. If everything works fine without conflict, merge conflict, or rebase conflict, I can just press it. There is actually a build trigger waiting, so I could now wait until our build server has actually built this. But I guess you all agree that it's just a silly change, and I go there and say reply, +2, great work, Lars, send. And typically we thank contributors, but not thanking me. So I take the commit ID, and basically, so that people can see what I did, this was runtime. I go to a web UI which we have, get the URL to that, and I go to my bug report, and say merged, fixed with commit. And the idea here is that we put in the commit ID with the web link is that you as an interested party could actually look at the code change, right? So that you learn something what we did. We do this not for us, it's just really for you. So how did he do this preference setting, what's actually changed? You can actually look the code changes up here in this web URL, right? And then I put it as resolve fix. And the next time Dirk will do a change in this plugin, he will not have any white space issues anymore, right? And it will be hopefully a more happier committer. It is not always like that. It's not always that simple. Let me look at a contribution from Google, which I integrated into the platform. You see we have quite a few files involved here. Yeah? And it took us a while to get this in. So Google initially published a patch, was patch set 1. We did a few reviews, other people jumped in, also did a few reviews. Then I did a few reviews more. Then Google did internal reviews. And we had like 27 enhancements of that. And finally, we integrated it. What is it? The question was, does Google do their internal reviews also with Gerrit? And the answer is we don't know. There's a secret place where nobody's allowed to enter in Googleplex. But they use a Python-based tooling for reviewing. They have actually written Gerrit for the Android project. So for Android, they do this. For the internal stuff, they still use their Python-based system because they internally use Perforce as a version control system because Git is not able to handle the massive amount of code which Google has. No, they did an internal, they did a review here, a public review for the source code. It was a student at Google who did this, and then another guy from Google was asked by me if he would be able to maintain it, and he also did a review there, right? And that's about it, right? You can always check out these changes, and you can also see these changes. Let me just look at my list of stuff. So it's a little bit Gerrit. They used to say it's not made for small screen resolutions. These are my changes which are pending. I can show you that some of them actually break the build. So the first column on the right side, or now right side, is the build verification. Something breaks the build, I need to look at that. There's also a review field. And for example, here this one, I reviewed my own stuff, give it a -2 because I didn't want anyone to commit this because it was work in progress, right? So I just indicated that. But typically we avoid -2 because it's a blocking vote. We give -1 and ask for improvements on that. So that's it, right? You basically contributed Eclipse and you can improve your experience. If you will have time for questions, but I would like also to talk about some things we do on the platform side to make it simpler for you to contribute. First of all, my team, Vogella company, is spending a lot of time, and you see this, this is Simon working for us, and this is me. And we have a lot of commits because we do all these silly little things, right? We always clean up commits, like the one I just did. And there's a lot of cleanup work to do, so you will find easy things to fix in the platform. Fix a warning there, do a generic implementation for a list which is still using raw types and so on. And we basically trying to... You see also that the platform UI team is not really big, right? If you look at these color coding, you see Wojciech is probably here. And that makes 75% of 6 people, right? There's 6 people doing 75% of the work. So another people can actually make a difference. To make it simpler for you, we're in the process of converting our test suite to JUnit 4. We do this because I had a student working for me, and I showed him the test, and he said, these are not tests. They have no annotations. JUnit 3, and said, okay, perhaps it's time to update our test suite if students don't recognize anymore JUnit 3. Right? We're also working on running our test in this Gerrit build trigger. At the moment, it's only a build trigger, and we run a few tests, but very little. And that, of course, puts some burden on the contributor because he or she is expected to run the test locally, but that is relatively hard. So we work on this. It's actually a lot of tiny little work. Some tests don't work in headless environments and so on. We need to do the build setup. So this is an unthankful work once it's done. Huh? Great. We also work on this white space situation, which we see, and we're also actively deleting outdated stuff. There was an old policy that stuff would not be deleted from the Git repository, even if it was not used anymore. And that was a hell of confusing for new contributors. So you're checking out the code, 20 plugins go red because they have compile errors, and you don't know that they are outdated. So we're basically actively deleting this. We're adding readme files to certain files which will not compile on certain platforms to make it also easier. And we're working also on a better Eclipse 4 API. The other important thing is we're working on more committers. We have a few people which doing code reviews, not too many, to be honest. I do a lot of code reviews, and I would like to have more people doing that. So we have a few people which we are coaching at the moment. I mentioned Google already, so we're coaching Google to become committers there. Dirk is on his way, becoming a committer, and a few other people. And these people are new and now used to Gerrit, so I hope they will also be willing to do reviews. And then the whole flow of contributions, reviews is getting faster, and from my opinion, the future looks relatively bright. And we do have time for questions. Yeah. Yeah, you can. The question was, do we have a list of easy fixable bugs? And the answer is yes and no. There's a tag which we use in Bugzilla which you can search for, which is bug day. Bug day. And if you search for them on our component, we have marked a few bugs which we think are relatively easy to solve for new contributors. There's also help wanted tag. But it was used in the past that everything which the team was not planning to do was tagged help wanted, so that is not necessarily an easy thing, but bug day is a good tag to search for. Or you just go into the email mailing list asking, I'm interested in doing something, what is a good place to start. We also have an IRC channel, which is Eclipse minus or dash E4. And you can also come there or send me an email and ask me what is an interesting task or a good starter task. So just email me if you need work. I have enough. The Hudson at the moment, the question was, you do all the things, but why does Hudson not test, no? Right? And that is why we want to do this. We have it, to make it easier for contributors, we would like that Hudson also runs the test. It has historical reasons why this is not the case. It used to be the time that this was running too long or too difficult. It used to be too difficult, right? You needed to have a script running all these things. It was just too difficult. But we have already, let's say, out of our 10, 12 test plugins, we have converted 3 running now also in Gerrit. Automatically with every Gerrit, and we're working actively on converting that. Next week we have plans to do the biggest test suite, also including them. But there are a lot of issues. It's actually quite time-consuming, a good way to contribute also for you if you want. Mm-hmm. The question was, I had to check out the whole Git repository. Isn't that too big? Is that the question? you have to do that. Yeah, but Git claims to be very efficient in compressing. Let me actually check if that is true. So it is, what is it? 173 megabyte, and then you get a whole platform UI repository, and 173 megabyte is nothing today, right? No, and the question is it sufficient to check out only platform UI, to work on platform UI? And the answer to that is sufficient. You typically, if time goes on, you need a relatively recent milestone of Eclipse. So at some point it happens in time that you cannot use Luna anymore to develop Mars, the next release, right? But we have milestone builds and integration builds. So you basically download the latest milestone build, and then it has all the new API stuff in it, and then you just check out platform UI to work on platform UI. But sometimes like runtime changes, and then you need the latest runtime, but this is included in the latest integration build. I think, Morris, for asking so many questions, I give you the book. Awesome. And I think we have time for one last question before the break. So now hands going down, no book anymore. If you want, we have also Vogella stickers. If you want, it's a magician, not a witch. No? Can also pick up stickers if you want. Any questions? Then I thank you. Nico, I have also a book for you for contributing your stuff. Nico is also giving a talk about his contribution for 15. How he did this and his experience and how great it was, I expect. Dirk is also talking about internationalization and what he's done there. And Daniel and I, Daniel is our co-lead of Platform UI, we're talking about migrating RCP application, and it's somewhere. You find it in the timescale. Thank you very much for your time. Huh?